Hey there, and welcome to the Weapon Refine Ideas for August 2020. So, this month we've got Legion, Cecilia, Setsuna, and Shiro, and much like the last few months, I believe they've made good choices for the characters getting weapon refines. All four of these characters could certainly use one. Setsuna here is the very last of the um, archers in Generation 1 BST, I believe. Unless you count. Oh no, Brave Hero's already got them. Yeah, she is the last one. I think she's the last colourless unit outside of Stuffs. So that's quite nice. Cecilia's finally getting her a fine. I'm really surprised that they gave the Book 2 Green Olwyn a refine before Cecilia here. Cecilia is a Gen 1 3 and 4 star unit. Legion, I think, is the second to last Grand Hero battle that has no pref. The other being Arden, so Arden's probably next month, though that's just a guess. And Shiro as the 5-star exclusive was completely unpredictable, but he's a good choice. He can certainly use on all his lances as sturdy stance, which is quite an outdated skill. So, yeah. Today I'll be going through each of these characters a little bit, talking about what they have when you get them, and what you can do with them at the moment. And then I'll say what I'd like to see for their refine, because there's some potential here for some pretty good weapons. It just depends what the developers decide to give them. But yeah, without further ado, let's get started. First up, we have Legion. Now, Legion has a very impressive offensive stat line for someone that came out so early in the game. He's got high attack and high speed. And then I looked at his defense and rares and realized why a lot more people don't use him. I mean, of course, being a Grand Hero battle, he costs heroic grails. But also, with such low bulk, it becomes difficult for him to duel units without dying quickly. Because even with the speed, it only takes a unit with high attack that doesn't even need the weapon triangle just to hit him in one shot. His high HP comes in handy here, but since he comes with Fury, well, his HP isn't going to sustain for very long. The Fury does give him a little bit extra bulk though, which is handy, and works quite well with his stat line regardless. Legion's axe is a good axe, it's been used for quite a while. But if you're looking for strong inheritable axes, Faithful Axe is a really good axe for units that want to run bulky builds to last long. And Slaying Axe is good for all else. Because special cooldown charge really is one of the most powerful things to have in a weapon. It synergizes with so many different skills. As for the rest of his kit, most of it's available on units. In fact, all of it's available on units that you don't need to spend grails on, so I'd recommend holding on to all copies of your Grand Hero Battle units, even if you don't really like them yet, in favour of sacrificing your common units that are renewable. Whereas Legion here is not as renewable. In fact, once you get to a certain amount of copies, you can't even get in with grails anymore. So I wouldn't fodder off your Legions just yet. Yeah, you may find that this refine is actually really good too. But yeah, as far as the skills go, Fury's the best there, if we're not counting weapon. Reprisal's okay, but not amazing, and Obstruct is not amazing, though if they make an Obstruct 4 B skill, then that might be good, but that's a way off yet, I think. Anyway, the build I went for was a distant counter set. His def and res is very, very equal, and with all these characters, by the way, don't forget Dragon Flowers can push their stats even further. So if you're worried about their speed in particular, or their bulk, Dragon Flowers will provide more, if you are wanting to invest that much into them. This is already quite high investment, but the idea is that by nullifying their attack and speed buffs with the Beast skill, your doubles will become very consistent. Faithful Axe gives speed, low attack speed effectively grants you speed, and then that's not including a buff. Joint Drive Attack and the Bond skill and Faithful Axe all work together. Just stand next to an ally and you gain 8 defense and res, 7 attack points and 3 speed. It's quite as simple as that, really. Very strong boost in stats. Helps his bulk, helps his damage, helps his speed. It's just one of those characters that benefits from boosting everything at once. Distant counter's a given with that sort of set because it's primarily enemy phase, so you're waiting for people to attack you, you're not the one going first. Ether's there for sustain, keeping your HP up, but you can swap this out for Noontime, Soul, or even a damaging special exclusively. I just find that with his bulk, he probably wants to have something to heal him, so you can play around with that as you wish. As for his Refine, I'd like to see him get something along the lines of Faithful Axe, but at the same time, going with the whole Legion's Axe thing, there's quite a lot they can do. And you've got to keep in mind also that there are so many demoted Axe units recently in the pool that are much newer and have higher base stat totals. So Legion's going to need some kind of unique niche in his Axe to stand out from the crowd of other units that would just be better choices. And this is especially true for the fact that you're using heroic grails, which are a very valuable resource to merge him. So hopefully he'll get something rather cool. But yeah, that's Legion for you. Here we have Cecilia. Now Cecilia is one of the only free-to-play mage cavalry units. I believe she's one of the only ones. There's also Reinhardt, and technically the book to Erica, because you get her for free from the Hero's Path quests. But apart from this, there really aren't many free-to-play mage cavs, which gives her a very strong niche already. And a lot of people built Cecilia back in the early days of the game, and even recently, because of this. It's a unique unit that will provide movement, range, and a rather strong stat line for a Blade Tome, which is what I've shown here. Now, the only problem with being a Mage Cav is that you don't really have many options. They don't have the Green Fox Tome yet, so I can't use that. And most tomes that green units have that are good are preference weapons that can't be inherited, like Forsetti or other skills, you know. So Cecilia getting a pref will be very handy. I'm not sure what she'll get, but my assumption is that she'll probably get something similar to the Robins, where she has a Raven Tome that can buff allies. This would actually be rather useful, as buff bots are always handy, even if they're for exclusive movement types. I know I'm doing this in a weird order, but ideally, either Tactics or Hone Cav and Fortify Cav in one would be really nice. It'd also give her a rather unique playstyle as being a buff bot for cavalry units, which is always useful. What she comes with, though, is a Raven Tome, Rally Resistance, Attack +3 and Escape Route 3. Rally Res and Escape Route are available at 4-star at their highest level. Escape Route's okay for doing specific things in harder maps. So if you've got an abyssal map, for example, Escape Route could be useful for dancers or other units to try and create some kind of strategy. Attack +3 hasn't aged particularly well. It's good as a cheap inherit on a Brave Axe, because you don't have to use Death Blow, but at the same time, you need her at 5-star to get this, and is it worth 20,000 feathers? No, not really. Rally Resistance isn't that useful anymore because people use double rallies rather than single rallies. It's not Rally Up Resistance Plus, it's just Rally Resistance, so not much worth there. But the Raven Tome, I'm surprised they haven't refined Raven Tomes yet, because they are quite underpowered as they stand. They're supposed to tackle colourless units, but most important colourless units like Legendary Ulm and Fallen Corrin and so on rip through Raven Tome units because they have too much speed. Or they have no follow-up, so Bowbreaker doesn't work, you know, things like this. So what they need is a little bit of a buff there, but this is about Cecilia. So as far as Raven Tomes are concerned, and her skill set in general, there's not much here to inherit, but she is from the very start of the game, so you can't expect too much. For her build, I went Speed Plus because she can run a rather decent speed set. I know this looks very simple. It's just a Blade Tome with some attack and speed, but the thing is, as a cavalry unit, you just don't have many skills open to you. You can also run Fury Desperation, but I feel like she needed a little bit extra speed, and that with her bulk she can actually get by without using desperation. I mean, lull speed res helps her double more consistently. The lull res helps her do more damage. You know, all these types of things. But what I'd like to see her get is something of a buffed Raven Tome, something that helps her tackle units like Legendary Olm properly, so she can actually do the job of being a colourless counter, or be a cavalry buff bot. Either one of these would be cool. A lot of people have built Cecilia, so hopefully she'll get something cool. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about Cecilia. And here we are with probably the last colourless unit of Book 1, Setsuna. So Setsuna comes in with a rather okay stat line of 37 speed, which is quite nice and high. Her attack's a little on the low side, which is why I went attack plus on the build. But her def and res are quite equal. Now, having equal def and res has always been a priority of mine when making builds. It's an advice I've picked up over the time I've played the game, that having mixed bulk is quite handy. But in a lot of cases with ranged units in particular, having a min-max stat line, which is when you have one stat much higher than the other, can actually be a lot more beneficial. For example, if she had 22 defense and 32 resistance, you could run Sturdy Impact, which grants 10 defense and 6 attack on initiation, meaning she'd have equal def and res, but with a really powerful ace skill. In this case, you can't run Mirror or Sturdy Impact, because you'll make your defense much more higher than res, or vice versa. So instead, you go with bond skills to try and equalize your def and res, and it gets a bit finicky. That being said, you can just go with Sturdy Impacts anyway and just have a lower res, but I don't know, there's something quite satisfying about hitting equal bulk, because it means that you can deal with any unit in the game the same way. Rather than going, oh no, they're magic, I'm not good against them. You can go, oh okay, magic, that's just the same any old day, and then the only check you worry about then is speed and what skills they have. She comes in with Reciprocal Aid, HP plus 5, Bow Breaker 3, and Assassin's Bow, which I forget is even in the game. None of these skills are particularly worth much now. Bow Breaker used to be good when Takumi was a thing, but that was 3 years ago now. Now you have Legendary Olm, who has null follow-up at base, so Bow Breaker is useless most of the time. And you also have coloured bows like Lucina and Crom, who aren't affected by Bow Breaker because they're not colourless bows. HP plus 5 is not that amazing, but it can be useful on characters like Aversa and Iago, and Virion. Those are probably the only characters in the whole game that would actually want them. Or Arden, if you're going for a meme build that has over 100 HP, that's fun. Reciprocal Aid can be useful on support units, so that's probably her best fodder, weirdly. And then Assassin's Bow isn't amazing, you just use Slaying Bow or Brave Bow. Brave Bow's really strong, Slaying Bow's good because you can refine it and it speeds up your special cooldown. As far as the build goes, 41 speed is enough, but the lull attack speed helps it be a bit more comfortable and consistent. Again, the bonds and the drive attack synergize to give you 9 attack if you're stood next to someone. 5 def, which equalizes your def and res a little bit. That's what the refine does. It boosts your res, and then the bond skill brings up your defense. And with Luna, you have a 2 cooldown strong special, which combo with Brave Lucina can be very, very satisfying to use. But otherwise, you're getting hitting back and then proccing Luna. It pretty much does the same thing. Of course, the Brave Lucina, you get more stats, but again, you know, this build typically will just be quite consistent, quite useful against all units in the game, with some buffs and team support as well, because while it is quite good, her attack is still rather low, and her bulk is not as high as other characters in the game that do the same thing, so keep that in mind. As far as her refine goes, I'd like to see her get, again, like all these characters, something that sets her apart from everyone else. Setsuna is the last archer of Gen 1 to get a refine, and given what we've had so far with units like Klein getting a pretty decent Brave Bow, Gordon getting a better one, but Gordon has a worse stat line, you know, things like this, and units like Jam K exist, there needs to be some kind of some kind of thing that sets her apart from the rest. Something perhaps involving debuffs, but then you got to compete with Claris. Then again, Setsuna doesn't cost Grails, so who knows. But it would be nice to see her get something, maybe that helps her run a close counter build, because most of the units that got refined in Gen 1 that are bows favour player phase, not enemy phase. So maybe something like this would be cool. And then finally we have the 5-star exclusive pick of this batch, Shiro. A lot of people forgot Shiro was in the game because it was at that time in Fire Emblem Heroes where a lot of units came out that weren't really that impactful to the game, and they just kind of faded out of existence after a little while. Characters like Sigbert, Shiro, some others. But the thing about Shiro that is quite interesting is the fact that after Shiro and Fjorm, there wasn't a single Lance infantry unit added to the game for about a year and a half, I believe. I might be wrong there, but I don't think there was one added until Dancing Berkut and Duo Ephraim. I genuinely think there were not many Lance infantries added. I think, you had Brave Lucina, Nephany, Shiro, and Fjorm, and then after that there was just nothing for months. Which is quite interesting. I'm not sure why they decided that they didn't want to add any more Lance infantries. What was even weirder was that when they did the Three Houses banner, rather than making Dimitri a Lance infantry, they decided to make him a cavalry unit, which gave him a lot harder competition with all these other Lance cavalry units in the game, but there's no Lance infantries to compete with, practically. You've got Shiro and Fjorm, they're not exactly the most powerful units ever, so I'm not sure why they didn't do that, but well, we got Shiro here. He's got less competition than the average character, because of course being a Lance infantry there aren't many others. His Lance is Sturdy Stance, which isn't exactly the most amazing skill, but he was a 2017 unit, so can't expect the best. His fodder's quite good actually. Defense Tactic is quite rare still, and while it's a Sacred Seal, I think, I might be wrong there, it is a skill that is harder to get hold of, much like Speed Tactic. Attack and Res Tactic are fairly easy because they're in the 3 and 4-star pool if you promote your character, but Defense Tactic and Speed Tactic are still kind of scarce. I think they've made Speed Tactic a bit easier recently, but Defense Tactic is a little sketchy. It's a bit hard. Steady Stance is good, but you can get that from a 4-star Silas, and Swap you can get from, I believe, quite a few 3 and 4 stars anyway. But yeah, Bright Naginata is an old weapon, and it shows, so what they might do with it, there's a lot that it could do. His stat line's not bad. He can run speed. You could also do a res plus IV to bring up his res a little bit. The build I went for was Distant Counter. It's pretty much like Legion, where you have Distant Counter, a lull skill, Joint Drive, and a Bond, because it just works really well. It also works really well with Brave Lucina. You get hit, immediately proc Ruptured Sky, but it's not necessary to make the build work. But it does work. The refine I'd like to see him get would be something that perhaps has a guard effect, because guard is very useful for Distant Counter. It allows you to run a lull skill in the B slot as well, meaning that with Brave Lucina you have guard effect, breath effect, and a lull all at once, and that makes you a very effective tank. It would also be nice to see him have an innate Distant Counter. That would be quite nice too, though I doubt they'd do that. Because the thing is, Distant Counter takes the A slot, which is a very powerful slot. So if you can get Distant Counter in your weapon, you free up a very, very powerful skill space that you can use for Fortress Def Res. You could use it for impact skills. You can use it for Stance 3 skills, which have guard effects. There's just a lot you can do with that sort of thing. So given that Shiro is a 5-star exclusive, it would be really nice to see him get something extra special. Something that helps him stand out against even what minimal competition there is. I mean, Brave Lucina is one of the best support units in the game. Fjorm has a really balanced stat line for Distant Counter builds in general, as well as a pref special. So what does Shiro bring? Well, he brings Sturdy Stance at the moment. So yeah, it'd be nice to see him get something a little bit better in his refine. Well, in conclusion, like I said earlier, all 4 of these units could certainly use a refine. I'm quite interested to see what they get, because Well, you know, it's quite nice to see old characters get new toys to play with. And of course, for fans of these characters, it's quite an exciting week build-up to when you finally get that refine. I'm also interested to see what the animation looks like for Cecilia's weapon, because I'm always looking out for the magic tome refines, because they always get, if they don't have a pref already, they always get their own unique weapon animation. Some of them could be less exciting, but some of them, like Sophia's, are really exciting. I quite like those. So I'm interested to see what Cecilia gets in that respect. But all these units have people that really like using them. Even the more obscure ones like Shiro and Legion have people that love playing the characters. And it's always quite satisfying to see people happy with weapon refines, because they feel like their character's actually been noticed. I know I did when the Robins got their refines. I was quite happy with their refine, even if it was a bit support locked. And +4 tool stats isn't brilliant, but I'm going off on a tangent now. It's just an exciting time when your favourite character gets refined. I am also interested to see when they finished all of the Gen 1 characters, at least the ones that don't have distant counter weapons, are called Reinhardt, or healers, where they're going to go from there. Will they go on to Gen 2? Will they do the controversial picks of the DC weapons and the Dire Thunder users? Or will they slow down and not do refines anymore? I don't know what they're going to do. I think, since they're already doing characters like Shiro, that they're locked into doing Book 2 refines at least. So maybe they'll start doing the demote characters as bulk for Book 2 refines. But yeah, we're approaching a point now where there aren't many left to choose from, and intelligent systems are going to have to decide what they're going to do about these other characters that don't have refines yet, especially the Gen 1 ones. Characters like Ira, Sigurd. I mean, Ira's weapon's rubbish, so she needs something with Slaying Edge at the very least. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. But for now, thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it useful in some way, whether it be enlightening you as to what some of these characters can already do, or hyping you up for the refine they're going to get. I don't know. But I hope you enjoyed it regardless, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.